Well, welcome to the Unstoppable Freedom Podcast. I'm Jimmy Page. In 2021, Andrew Crapuchettes, the founder of RedBalloon, the #1 woke-free job board in America, quickly became their largest connector of employees and employers who prioritize a positive workplace culture free from the divisiveness of cancel culture mandates. He and his company, RedBalloon, are key leaders in creating a parallel economy that values freedom, American values, and work ethic while rejecting woke ideologies. Hey, welcome back for part 2 in a 2-part series with RedBalloon CEO Andrew Crapuchettes. Here we go.
I love that. And we're also not giving resources to companies that we know are using it against us. I mean,
Totally.
How satisfying is that? You know, I was thinking about, we've seen these companies that have made mistakes like Bud Light, Bud Light is a punchline now. Now, I know that it's being resurrected thanks to the UFC and Dana White, and I get all that.
Yeah.
You know, there's a lot of American workers at stake. I got that. But I hope the company gets the message that we're not going to put up with any more of this nonsense, and we don't want them spending our money, right? Targeting kids for transgender. We've got Disney, which is, I mean, you can't even recognize Disney from 20 years ago. Company after company after company that is directly opposed to our values. And why am I going to give my money to them? I have a phrase that's, put your money where your heart is. Your money should follow your values. Starbucks. I used to be, I don't know, if they had a frequent purchase program at Starbucks, I was that guy. Thousands and thousands of coffees I would buy a year. And as soon as they disrespected the police and the military, I'm like, oh, I'm done.
Yep.
We don't align. You're spending your money on nonsense that I don't agree with. The same is true for Nike, Disney, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Once you become aware of what these companies are doing with your resources, the resources you give them with your purchasing power, then you need to make different decisions. And I was thinking too, having an alternative. First of all, I think RedBalloon, if you don't have a directory of companies that are pro-God, pro-freedom, you need to have it, because I want to go and click on these companies, right? You probably already have this. We'll probably talk about it. My daughter was telling me just this last week that she was doing searches that's about Christian persecution in the world. Are there Christian martyrs today? And on Google, you can't believe it, but there wasn't a single reference to any Christian persecution anywhere. Okay.
Right.
And I said, hey, use DuckDuckGo, use an alternative search engine. And it came up with a list of 100 different sources for all of the Christian persecution that's happening in the world. This is the same thing that's happening in corporate America. We need to know the companies that are supporting our values.
Yep. Absolutely. And again, obviously all the businesses on RedBalloon, you would love to be spending your money with them.
Yes.
And I'll shout out one of my good friends, Michael Seifert over at Public Square.
Yes.
Public Square's got over 80,000 businesses who have signed a pledge that they believe America is a great nation. And they've gone so far as to say, we need to protect the freedom of all Americans, even the unborn. Which I think is really, really important. And the fact that there's that many businesses, and this is the other encouragement I'd love to give to people. RedBalloon is about 2 years old. We have had over almost 4,000 businesses sign up on RedBalloon. We've had over 2 million job seekers. I have received thousands of thank you notes from perfect strangers saying, I have a new job. It's changed the trajectory of my family, saved my marriage. It's my kids are going to church again with me, like all these good things, right? Then you look at a Public Square with 80,000 businesses who have raised their hand and said, yeah, I'll sign up for all of those Judeo-Christian values that you're requiring to be part of this marketplace. And so I think that should be encouraging to people, because if you listen to the mainstream media, it's so easy to believe you're the only one who thinks the way you do and you're an idiot. Right? Because that's what they want you to think. But when it is so much easier to be brave when you know that you're not alone. And this parallel economy is part of giving everyone courage to stand up at work, because if it costs you your job, don't worry. There are a lot of great jobs on RedBalloon, and you can find a new job where you're going to be free. And that's, why podcasts like this are so important, Jimmy, because people need to know you're not alone. There's a lot of good, clear thinking people out there who are building this parallel economy. You're not alone, and you can be brave because you're not the only one. So anyway, that's my encouragement to people. The parallel economy is growing quickly. The party is on. The water is warm. Come on, jump in. It's amazing.
Yes, I love that. It is so true, right? Now we're learning of companies. And I think even in terms of First Form, which is Andy Frisella,
Yep.
his company, massive company. He's got many companies, but here's a guy that's been on the cutting, kind of that bleeding edge of standing for freedom, risking everything really in, 3-4 years ago when it was very risky and very unpopular to stand up for these types of values. Once you realize these companies, Shields Sporting Goods is another great company. They should be on RedBalloon for sure if they're not. These are companies that share our values. Let's talk a little bit about the corporate side, the company side, those that are signing up with you, because I have a list of probably 40 companies in my head right now that need to be listing on RedBalloon, that need to be seeking job seekers there. What's the hesitancy that a company might have, and how do you help that company overcome that hesitancy so that if they get called names and the nanny boo boo and you're a racist and all these other nonsensical things, what do you tell those companies so that it puts them at ease to come over?
Yeah, that's a good question. Because we do live in a culture where liberals are better at throwing a hissy fit than conservatives are, right? They just are. They're gonna blow you up on whatever social media platform they can find. They're activists in a way that most conservatives are not. And so is that a risk? Absolutely. And we do have an option. We have a number of businesses that have signed up on anonymous balloon. So they want to have access to the awesome conservative, freedom-loving job seekers that are on there, but they feel like the cost will be too great for them with their customer base. But I'll say of the almost 4,000 businesses, maybe 20 have signed up for anonymous balloon because they're realizing that it absolutely might tweak some of your customers a little bit. But this is back to that self-censorship. We need to be brave and not afraid all the time. I'll give a story. There's a plumbing shop here in our town, McCoy's Plumbing. He's been in business for 30 years, and he recently he posted jobs on RedBalloon. And as a side note, he put a Christ is Lord flag up in his window.
Imagine.
And he says, you wouldn't believe. He says, I had like 4 or 5 customers come in and be like, I am never going to work with you again because you're doing this. And he's like, that's great because they were the worst customers to work with anyway. And they were always the whiners. And he said, and I've gotten way more customers who are the type of people that I love to work with. So, is there going to be a cost? Yes. I mean, if you were in Nazi Germany and you stood up with the Jews, was there a cost? Yeah. Was it the right thing to do? Also, yeah. And so I think that's the moment we're in. It's not going to cost you nearly as much as you think it will. And it actually will benefit you way more than you think it will. And so that's what my encouragement to business. And we have story after story after story of businesses being like, you know what? I lost a customer or two because I aligned with Public Square or RedBalloon. But I got new customers that actually were the type of people I like to work with more anyway. So, so if you're an employer, I mean, you can post a job on RedBalloon for as little as $75 a month. You can be in front of the over 100,000. We have over 100,000 unique visitors every month who are looking for freedom in the workplace. So you're going to be in front of the best kind of people. We're not going to drive as much traffic as an Indeed.com, but we are going to drive the right kind of traffic, which is, I think, really, really important. So we would love to work with more employers. If you know people, if you have a brother-in-law that feels stuck at a woke job, have them fill out a job seeker profile at RedBalloon. And what that will do is then employers can proactively reach out. So we add over 1,000 new profiles of job seekers every week into our database. These are people putting in their resume saying, you know, pick me. And these are all the best kind of workers. And if you do that, then companies proactively reach out to them. It's just really fun to see this momentum build and kind of this symbiotic relationship between pro-freedom job seekers, pro-freedom employers.
That's amazing. You know, it really is. I think that you're on the front end of this. Like this is a snowball. This is a snowball effect because I think within a year or two, you'll be at that 80,000. You'll be at that 100,000 companies. You know, it really will be that. I think that's what's happening. I think that's predictive. I think depending upon how this election cycle goes, which we know is going to be nonsense, depending on how that goes, boy, there's going to be a real need potentially for people like-minded, like-valued people to come together like this. Let me ask you this. Ministries. Okay, so I'm assuming as well that ministries are part of your network, whether it's churches or Christian ministries or nonprofits. I can imagine this is a pretty important thing because we've seen the church fracture over wokeness, right? And we've seen George Soros has openly said that he has infiltrated the church. I mean, here's a guy that is probably one of the greatest Marxists probably in the world, and the whole World Economic Forum. They have actively infiltrated the church, especially in America, by training people to get hired at churches and then go subvert the doctrine. I mean, it's absolutely nuts the more you know about this, right?
Yep.
So our church now, there's a very small minority of pastors who believe in a biblical worldview. It's stunning when you actually see the statistics from, I think it's from Gallup or another poll service. It really is concerning, right? But I'm assuming this is a really safe place for churches, for ministries, for nonprofits, right? Wouldn't this be a perfect spot for them to be searching for employees?
Absolutely. So we've helped a lot of Christian schools. We've helped churches with hiring, right? And if you're a nonprofit, you actually have it a little bit easier because you actually can ask for a resume and a statement of faith, right? And a lot of businesses who are churches, they're a nonprofit, they feel nervous about doing that. No, you should absolutely hold the line in the way that you're hiring, because these people are, if your people are your most important asset, then you should be investing in your most important asset and getting the right people on the bus. So, but who has it worse? I was actually just speaking at a Christian Booksellers Association, big conference in Charleston, bunch of small Christian bookstores. They are for-profits. They cannot ask for a resume and a statement of faith. But one of them told me a story. He says, I accidentally hired a Satanist to run work in my shop. He says, and that doesn't play well with customers, believe it or not. Nearly killed my store, nearly killed my business. Gosh. I lost almost $100,000 because of that bad hire, because it nearly took down my store. I had to move. Like it was an unbelievable thing because he hired the wrong person, right? Yeah. And so for them, it is so critical to hire well, for churches, for schools, for all of these folks. So, and that's also been really fun. We helped place a head of school for a small Christian school in Alaska recently. And they're like, we didn't think this could even ever happen. And so, you feel this kind of despair and like, well, I guess I'll just have to settle with whoever I can hire. And I would encourage people never do that. It'd be better to be understaffed than poorly staffed.
Yes.
And Red Balloon can come alongside and help those organizations. And we have been able to help those organizations. I'm not always saying it's easy. The labor market is tight. And clear thinking people who believe in the Bible are not just laying all over the streets. They're usually actually very busy because hardworking conservatives already have a job. And so we're working hard to fill those positions. But absolutely, you need to be putting your jobs on Red Balloon. You need to be participating in this parallel economy.
Well, while we're enjoying, this is a sad state of affairs, right? While we've been enjoying the blessings of liberty, the Marxists have been undermining the foundations of liberty. And so now we find ourselves having to do both. We need to continue to enjoy life and life abundant the way God would design it. But at the same time, now we gotta fight for our values and we got to get back to that. Let me ask you this. There's a lot of charter schools out there. The public school system has a ton of challenges, of course. In fact, in many ways, this woke ideology has forced out tens of thousands of teachers out of the public school educational system, which is a disaster for the kids that remain there, of course. If you're a charter school, are charter schools a target for you guys? Are they the type of employers that would benefit? Obviously, they would benefit from advertising there. Are they the type of people that can get away with that since they're part of the public school structure?
Yeah, it's a lot harder at charter schools. Obviously, when you're receiving government funds,
right?
The person who's paying the bills generally has a lot of say in what you're allowed to do or how you're allowed to do it. Now, that being said, I was working with a large publicly traded company, and he had the CEO was like, "I'm going to post on Red Balloon. I'm going to get a lot of flack from HR department." I'm like, "Look, think about it like this: if you're posting on 3 or 4 different sites, you can let them know Red Balloon's just one of 3 or 4 that we are using to achieve talent. And when you couch it like that for the right people, then it's no problem. And you might decide you want to preference the people that are coming through Red Balloon rather than Indeed or ZipRecruiter, but that's important." Speaking of, so we do this Freedom Economy Index once a month. We survey all of the Public Square businesses and all the Red Balloon businesses. So over 85,000 together businesses, and we ask them a bunch of things. And connected to the public school thing, we were asking people, businesses that want to move or nationwide. So 50% of businesses in the nation are happy with where they are. They have no intention of moving states, moving cities. They're just happy with that, right? 50% nationwide. If you look at California, only 13% of businesses are happy with where they are. Okay. So
Unbelievable.
let that settle in, right?
Wow.
You've got over 80% of businesses are either looking to move, in the process of moving, or would like to move, but just simply can't afford it. And so we asked them, like, why do you want to move? What's the goal in moving? And these are not going to surprise you. High taxes and government regulation were the top two, or anti-business government, right? High taxes, anti-business government. Number 3 is going to surprise you for these businesses, both nationwide and in California, woke public schools.
Oh my
That
God.
is the reason businesses are moving, because these businesses have kids. And so they're realizing that one of the most important things for their legacy is kids that don't hate America and don't hate God. And the public school system, particularly in California, is trying to make kids hate America and hate God.
Yes.
And so anyway, I thought that was fascinating, that the third most important reason why these businesses want to move is the public school system.
Oh my gosh.
Isn't that crazy?
It is crazy, but you know, it makes sense too. Like you think about when you were trying to find a neighborhood to move into and buy a home in. If you had kids, you were always considering those schools. Hey, these schools
That's
better be darn good. You know, my wife and I, when we moved to Colorado, we did that research. By we, I mean we.
That's right.
She did the research, and we found a school that we felt at the time supported our values, and we've come to learn that it doesn't at all.
No.
Thankfully, all of our kids are through the public school system, and but that's an amazing statistic that businesses are considering moving. You know, you think about Elon Musk, who's relocating the headquarters for Tesla and for others. I just love this idea. I don't love the idea that companies are moving on one hand, because I want us to change the culture everywhere. California needs help. There are a lot of good, strong believers there, conservative values, pro-America, pro-God, who need people to stay. And by the way, none of the rest of us want people coming, because it's usually not the same values that are coming.
That's right. Yeah.
Right. So I'm just thinking, here in Colorado, I guarantee you, in fact, I believe the stat is that as many people that moved into Colorado essentially moved out of Colorado last year. Well, I can tell you this is one of the greatest places to live, except for the political ideology.
That's right.
And that's the problem, because the schools are going woke largely, but thankfully we've got some alternatives here. But from a business perspective, what do you tell those businesses? So this is why Red Balloon is so important to me, because you could transform that business in that town. But what do you tell them about staying or going?
Yeah, it's tricky. You know, we were trying to hire for a conservative business in the San Francisco Bay Area.
Oh my gosh!
And we're like, man, this is slim pickings to find people who are going to be able to have the skills, be aligned with your values. And unfortunately, they were also paying below market. And we're like, this is not a trivial thing. We actually gave them more information about their positions and their jobs. And we're like, okay, so you have a couple different options here. You are looking for a very specific person, so you probably need to pay a little bit above market value, because generally the more requirements you put on a job, the higher the price. It's just the supply and demand, right?
Yes.
And so if you are looking at a very small pool of candidates in San Francisco who fit your values, who also have your skill set, supply and demand dictates that you're going to need to spend more for them. Whereas if you're in Texas or Florida or Idaho or even North Carolina, you're probably going to pay significantly less for those people. I encourage people. So first of all, on the job seeker side, I encourage people, if you're stuck in a woke business, don't quit, get fired. It's better for you legally if you stand up and be brave, because sometimes it works out. We had one person tell us that they did this and found out that 95% of their workplace actually totally agreed with them and was grateful that they were brave, right? And it was just the 3 woke tards in HR that were running the whole show. And so that's my encouragement, is don't quit, be fired. And when you are fired, obviously come over to Red Balloon and get yourself a new job. But that's really important. And then on the business side, you know, I don't know that it's going to work to stay in some of these places. I talked to a business that's doing $2 billion a year in revenue in Washington State. And they said, look, we run the math every year on whether it is worthwhile to basically sell all our buildings or abandon our buildings and just leave. And it is getting closer and closer and closer. And every time Ainsley has another stupid idea, it gets closer. And so at some point, and this is what's, I think, interesting, is you look at the huge deficit in the state of California right now.
Yes.
Right. There's going to be economic consequences for this. In 2020, the state of New York lost $19 billion of annual taxable income with people just leaving. Hardworking conservatives who are like, I've had enough. Well, $19 billion a year, that's not a one time, every single year of taxable income that's leaving New York and going to Florida, right?
Yes.
Well, you start to have that at scale, and businesses take a lot longer to move, right? They don't move in a minute. That's something you really think about over years. You plan for over years. But I think people they started thinking about it in 2020. And what we're finding from our data is there is this groundswell that nobody's seen yet of businesses that are planning a move. They just got to get all their ducks in a row to do it. And because they simply can't stay in business. It's either the option is leave California or shut your doors, right? And if that's your option, then you need to leave, right? It's better to do that. Well, if 40% of the businesses that we surveyed said we are planning a move but haven't done it yet, that means that hasn't shown up in any of the economic data yet. That hasn't shown up in any of the tax data yet. And there is this invisible wave of hardworking conservatives and businesses that are going to be leaving. And we might have like an Ayn Randian moment in California where all of a sudden, all the conservatives left and the state just implodes on itself. I don't love that. I grew up in California. I love California.
Right.
But I don't know that there's a choice anymore for some of these businesses.
Yeah. And I have a son who lives in Southern California. I'm begging him to leave because he'll get a 20% pay increase just because of the tax changes.
That's right.
I mean, you just can't, you can't build wealth personally, individually, as a business in these states anymore. We are being robbed. This is a grand theft auto. I mean, this is a bad situation. But I love this idea, though, right, that we need to infect our culture. I think it is going to be increasingly more difficult for these businesses to stay in these states. It concerns me because I live in what I would consider a conservative exit state. People are going to be leaving the state, sadly. We've chosen to stay because we want to change the culture, and we love it here. And we, at some point, we also think, gosh, are we ever going to get to the end of the road where there's no other states to move to? I mean, at what point does this liberalism take over? Let me ask you this: a couple more questions before we wrap it. You say that this is a movement of hometown America, and I love that statement. Right? What do you mean by that? What do you mean that this is a movement of hometown America?
Well, what we wanted to try and capture by that is, all of us kind of feel the difference between a small town in the Midwest somewhere and San Francisco, and there's so many ways you can kind of unpack that. And I would almost, if you had to put one word on it, I would say it's trust. Right? Yeah. When you're in a small town, you trust the people around you. Yes. There's that song, Try That in a Small Town.
Yes.
And it's this hometown America. It's what we grew up with. It's what all of us grew up with. And I think we can get back to, and we need people who can trust each other, who can work hard and are not trying to, destroy each other's lives. And unfortunately, when you go to these big cities, I was talking to one of our customers recently. He's like, I just had an employee shot in Seattle because it's such a dangerous place. And it's like, well, at some point, it's not safe for your family to be there anymore. And what do you want? Well, you want this hometown. You want a place where you can trust people around you.
Yes.
My kids, I live in Moscow, Idaho. My kids ride bikes. And I don't even worry about it. Like they're going to ride downtown. They're going to go miles and miles in town. And I simply don't need to worry about it. Well, that's what we all want, right? At the end of the day. And I think that's what we were trying to capture. This is a movement to get back to the Judeo-Christian values that our hometowns, our small towns had, where we could actually trust each other.
Yes.
And that's what, kind of RedBalloon stands for. And, think about, imagine a small town, imagine a hometown, and then imagine you're working for a business that amplifies those values. Yes. Well, that sounds amazing, doesn't it? Right. And that's what we want to get back to. And I think it's possible. And I think it's possible at scale. We're already seeing the scale grow like mad. So that's where we're going. And I think it is possible.
That's amazing. And you're so right. I remember the days when I was growing up in that small town, and we would ride our bikes and we would play from the moment we got home from school till dark. And all of us would be listening for our moms yelling our names to come home for dinner. You remember that?
Right.
I mean, right?
That's right.
And every now and then we're like, Mom, I didn't hear you at all. Like, what? You were calling for me?
Right. That's right. But your parents didn't have to worry that you were gonna, be doing needles or get mugged or get a woke ideology or whatever it was, right? You just didn't have to worry about that. And so that's the trust that we want to get back to between an employer and an employee. Because as someone, so I've hired thousands of employees over the years. I've run fairly large businesses. I'm not talking, Fortune 500, but pretty good sized tech businesses. And when you have employees that trust their manager to do the best thing for them, and when you as a boss trust your employees, Ben Horowitz says that company culture, the way you define culture, is what the employees do when the CEO is not there. And that just means the CEO trusts that they are running the right direction, right? And so that's the type of business that we want to get back to, where employees trust the employer and the employer trusts the employee, and you're not walking on eggshells all over the place with someone who's offended at the drop of a hat. We had a large marketing company in New York actually call me up. He says, look, I made a number of hires. It cost me enormous amounts of money to hire people. I ended up needing to fire them. He said, look, I agree in meritocracy. I agree in free speech. And we probably disagree on a bunch of other social issues. But as long as I promise to protect my employees' freedom and let them live their values out loud, am I allowed to use Red Balloon? Am I allowed to participate in this marketplace of freedom-loving Americans? And I'm like, yeah, that'd be great. He says, great. And your recruiter process for $4,500 is going to save me $30,000 per hire, which also it got his attention. So, but I think that should be encouraging to us. Where the pendulum is swinging, people are starting to think differently. They're willing to stand up because they realize there's a huge economic value to trust in the marketplace, and the woke culture has zero trust.
Yes, I love that. And one of the things I love, and maybe we'll end on this point, you have something that job seekers have to sign, right? Don't you have a community pledge of sorts, which kind of talks about, hey, these are core principles, and this is what we're expecting of you if you're going to participate in this Red Balloon opportunity. Well, tell us a little bit about the community pledge, and then we'll wrap up.
Yeah, all the employers have to sign something. The Constitution still matters, and they're going to protect the freedom of their current and future employees, right? It's really straightforward. It's simple, and you'd be surprised how many people are nervous about that.
Wow.
And then on the job seeker side, like, you need to sign a pledge. You're going to show up, work hard, not be a whiner. Like, honestly, it's not that complicated. If you do those three things, show up, work hard, not be a whiner, there's every employer on the planet would like to hire you. And as long that shouldn't be a hard pledge.
No.
But again, we have some people bounce when they get to that pledge, like, oh, I don't know if I could sign that. That's great. And Red Balloon would be the filtering mechanism for all the employers that want people who want to work hard, show up, and not be a whiner. So
it's amazing.
It's really straightforward. And it's been a blessing to be part of the story for so many of these employers and job seekers who are like, man, my life has changed. The trajectory of my family has changed because I have a new job.
What a purpose-driven new chapter in your life. I mean, you just think about what you left to what you have now and the difference that you're making. I mean, this is a significant opportunity to make a difference in the culture. Hey, leave us with how everyone can get a hold of you, get in touch with Red Balloon, and then we'll send our whole audience to you guys.
That'd be amazing. So yeah, redballoon.work, not .com, redballoon.work. You can check out everything there. There's great resources for employers and for job seekers. Also, you can follow us on all the social media platforms, the woke ones and the non-woke ones, at Red Balloon Work. And I'm a Crapuchettes. And yes, it's the normal spelling of Crapuchettes. You'll have to look me up. But it's a Crapuchettes at, I'm mostly just on LinkedIn and Twitter just because I don't have the patience for Facebook.
Yeah. Well, hey, listen, we're going to put all your information in the show notes, and we're going to make sure that we promote this as much as we can. We got a lot of entrepreneurs, a lot of business owners that listen to this, and more than that, even leaders in every single industry that are going to want to make sure they're hiring the right people. Andrew, you're the man. Thanks, brother. Appreciate you.
Thanks for having me, Jimmy.
Yeah, man.